What if you could negotiate a raise, close a deal, or settle an argument with ease? Imagine having the tools to not only get what you want, but to do so without the stress, conflict, or compromise you've been taught is necessary. Wouldn't that change the way you approach life? Negotiation isn't just for boardrooms or high-stakes hostage situations. It's happening around you every day. When was the last time you tried to convince your boss to give you a better deal? Or even tried to get your kids to agree on where to eat? These are negotiations, and they matter more than you think. But here's the catch. Most people are doing it wrong. In Never Split the Difference, former FBI hostage negotiator Chris Voss shows that real negotiation is about much more than just meeting in the middle. It's about understanding the other person's emotions and using that insight to guide the conversation. Whether you're negotiating a salary increase or deciding where to go on vacation, Voss's techniques will give you the edge. What if, instead of pushing for a yes, you could actually benefit from hearing a no? Or what if there was a way to get people to reveal their true desires without them even realizing it? In this summary, you'll learn how to apply powerful real-world tactics to your everyday negotiations, tactics that can make even the toughest conversations feel easier. Are you ready to transform the way you handle negotiations in your daily life? Get ready to dive in and discover how mastering the art of negotiation can open doors you never thought possible. Chapter 1. The New Rules. Chris Voss begins by dismantling the common notion that negotiation is a logical, even-tempered process where both parties work towards a win-win outcome. Instead, he argues that human beings are inherently emotional, and emotions drive negotiations more than logic ever could. Drawing on his experience as an FBI hostage negotiator, Voss shows how the stakes of any negotiation, whether it's life or death in a hostage situation or securing a business deal, are governed by emotional dynamics. He emphasizes that attempting to ignore or suppress emotions is a critical mistake. Voss illustrates this with a powerful example. A 1971 hostage crisis at John and Al's Sporting Goods in Brooklyn, where a poorly handled police intervention led to tragic deaths. The lesson: emotional intelligence in negotiation isn't just a soft skill. It's often the difference between life and death. The real breakthrough in modern negotiation, according to Voss, came in 1972 after the Munich Olympics massacre. This event triggered a rethinking of crisis negotiation strategies. Instead of using brute force, negotiators started using empathy and active listening to connect with hostage takers emotionally. Voss highlights how this shift laid the foundation for a new way of thinking about negotiation based on tactical empathy, the practice of understanding and influencing the other party's emotions to reach a favorable outcome. In tactical empathy, you're not just hearing the words the other person says, you're fully understanding their emotional drivers and using that knowledge to navigate the conversation. Voss argues tactical empathy isn't about agreeing with the other person, but making them feel understood. This builds trust, rapport, and a shared sense of purpose, which are essential in any high-stakes negotiation. Some items that might need your attention right away. Replace logic-driven tactics with an emphasis on understanding the emotional currents in every negotiation. Practice tactical empathy by acknowledging the other party's emotions, even when you disagree with them. Build trust and rapport by listening attentively and recognizing the emotional subtext of the conversation. Chapter 2. Be a mirror. In Chapter 2, Voss introduces mirroring, a technique that may seem overly simple at first glance, but is a powerful tool for extracting information and building rapport. Mirroring involves repeating the last 1 to 3 words that the other party just said. While it may feel awkward initially, it works at a deep psychological level. When people hear their words echoed back, it triggers a subconscious need to elaborate and explain their thoughts further, giving you more insight into their perspective. What makes mirroring so effective is that it doesn't come off as confrontational. It makes the other person feel heard without you having to reveal much about your own position. This technique is beneficial in heated or high-pressure situations where direct confrontation could escalate tensions. By simply repeating their words, you shift the focus back to them and gently prompt them to provide more information. Another essential component of active listening that Voss emphasizes in this chapter is tone of voice. Voss advocates using what he calls the late-night FM DJ voice, a deep, calm, and soothing tone that puts the other party at ease. This voice conveys empathy and authority simultaneously, encouraging the other party to feel safe enough to continue the conversation. Voss recounts the story of a consultant who used mirroring to diffuse a tricky situation with her boss. The boss had made an unreasonable demand, asking the consultant to make thousands of copies of documents for an upcoming presentation. Instead of arguing or pushing back, she mirrored his request, saying thousands of copies? This simple mirroring prompted the boss to rethink his demand. As he continued to explain, he realized that his request was impractical, and the issue resolved itself without conflict. This example shows how powerful mirroring can be, even in everyday professional settings. By reflecting on the other person's words, you not only avoid escalating a potential disagreement, but also lead them toward a more reasonable conclusion without direct confrontation. Key takeaways from this chapter. Practice mirroring by repeating the last 1 to 3 words of the other party's statement to encourage elaboration. Use the late-night FM DJ voice to create a calming effect and de-escalate tense conversations. Avoid rushing to fill silences. Let the other party reveal more by sitting with the pause. Chapter 3. Don't feel their pain, label it. Building on the principles of tactical empathy. Chapter 3 introduces the concept of labeling emotions. Labeling is about explicitly acknowledging the emotions that the other party is experiencing, whether positive or negative, without necessarily agreeing with them. The goal here is not to sympathize or agree, but to validate their feelings, which in turn helps to de-escalate any emotional tension. Voss explains that naming the other party's emotions makes them feel understood. This is critical in negotiations, especially in highly charged or contentious situations. When people feel that their emotions are being recognized, they are more likely to relax and engage in productive dialogue. For instance, instead of saying, "I understand you're angry," which can come off as dismissive or patronizing, you might, "It seems like you're frustrated with how things are going." This subtle shift in language shows that you're paying attention to their emotional state without making assumptions about how they feel. The simple act of labeling emotions can serve as a release valve, reducing the intensity of their feelings. Voss also introduces the accusation audit, a proactive strategy that involves preemptively labeling the negative things the other party might think or feel about you. For example, suppose you believe they view you as aggressive or self-serving. In that case, you might say, "You probably think I'm here to take advantage of the situation." This technique allows you to take control of the narrative and disarm potential objections before they become roadblocks. A compelling example Voss shares involves a hostage negotiation in which the FBI team used labeling to de-escalate a volatile situation. The hostage taker was becoming increasingly agitated, and traditional negotiation tactics were not working. By labeling his emotions, acknowledging his fear and frustration, the FBI was able to calm him down and create space for a productive conversation that ultimately led to the safe release of the hostages. Key action items from this chapter. Use labeling to acknowledge the other party's positive and negative emotions. Conduct an accusation audit before entering into negotiations. Identify the negative thoughts the other party might have about you and address them upfront. Take your time providing solutions. Instead, focus on validating the emotions that are driving the other party's decisions. Chapter 4. Beware yes, master no. In Chapter 4, Voss turns a widely held negotiation belief on its head. The idea that getting to yes is the ultimate goal. He argues that pushing for yes too early can actually hinder negotiations because it puts pressure on the other party and may make them feel trapped. Instead, Voss suggests that a no is far more valuable in the early stages of a negotiation. Why is no so important? It gives the other party a sense of control. When someone says no, they feel empowered. They have set a boundary, which makes them more comfortable continuing the conversation. Voss explains that no is often a defense mechanism that protects the other person's autonomy. Once they feel secure in that autonomy, they become more open to dialogue and less defensive. Voss explains that negotiators often make the mistake of rushing toward a yes because they believe it's a sign of progress. However, this can backfire, especially if the other party feels cornered into agreeing before they are truly ready. A premature yes can lead to a lack of follow-through or worse, a breakdown in trust. To help negotiators embrace no as a starting point for deeper dialogue, Voss introduces calibrated questions, open-ended questions that begin with how or what. These questions are designed to keep the conversation flowing without pushing the other party into a corner. For instance, instead of asking, "Do you agree with this proposal?" you might ask, "How does this proposal fit with your current priorities?" This phrasing encourages the other party to share more information and opens up avenues for further negotiation. A key example in this chapter involves a business negotiation in which Voss successfully used no to uncover the other party's real concerns. By giving them the space to express what they didn't want, he could pivot the conversation toward what they truly needed, ultimately leading to a better outcome for both sides. The key takeaways from this chapter: avoid pushing for a premature yes. Instead, invite the other party to say no early in the conversation. Use calibrated questions that begin with how or what to encourage the other party to share more information. Recognize that no is not a dead end. It's a starting point for uncovering deeper concerns and moving the negotiation forward. Chapter 5. Trigger the 2 words that immediately transform any negotiation. In Chapter 5, Voss explains the psychological power behind the words, "That's right." When someone says, "That's right," they are not just agreeing with you on a surface level, but confirming that you fully understand their perspective. This deeper level of agreement is far more valuable than a simple yes, because it signals genuine validation and alignment. The chapter explores the behavioral change stairway model, which outlines the steps required to move from active listening to behavioral change. The key to this model is building rapport and trust through empathy, labeling, and summarizing. When you successfully summarize the other party's thoughts and emotions, you create a moment of validation that often leads to the coveted "that's right" response. Voss illustrates this concept with the story of a negotiation for the release of Jeffrey Schilling, a hostage held by the Abu Sayyaf terrorist group. The negotiators used the BCSM techniques, active listening, labeling, and summarizing, to carefully mirror the worldview of the kidnappers. By doing so, they could elicit a "that's right" from the kidnappers, which marked a turning point in the negotiation. Ultimately, this breakthrough led to Schilling's safe release. Voss emphasizes that "that's right" moments are critical because they signal that the other party feels truly understood. This emotional connection can create the conditions for more productive negotiations and better outcomes. A few action items from this chapter. Aim for "that's right" responses instead of "yes" by accurately summarizing the other party's perspective. Use techniques like labeling, active listening, and summarizing to build trust and rapport. Recognizing that "that's right" signals deep understanding and agreement. paving the way for successful negotiation outcomes. Chapter 6. Bend Their Reality. Voss explores the psychological principle of loss aversion in this chapter, which reveals that people are more motivated to avoid losses than to achieve gains. Voss explains how negotiators can use this insight to bend the other party's reality and create a sense of urgency. By framing a negotiation in terms of what the other party stands to lose rather than what they could gain, you can push them toward agreement. One way to leverage loss aversion is by anchoring the conversation with an initial offer that sets the tone. This is known as anchoring, a technique where the first number or condition introduced in a negotiation becomes the reference point for all subsequent discussions. Even if your anchor is extreme, it influences how the other party perceives the negotiation. They are more likely to accept your real offer because it seems more reasonable than the initial anchor. Voss also discusses the importance of understanding the emotional drivers behind the other party's stated positions. Often, what people ask for on the surface doesn't reflect their true underlying needs. By asking calibrated questions and actively listening, you can uncover what's really driving their decisions, whether it's fear, insecurity, or a desire for control. He shares a story about a business deal where the buyer was fixated on getting a lower price. Instead of conceding immediately, Voss used calibrated questions to understand the buyer's real motivation, fear of being seen as weak by his superiors. By addressing this emotional concern, Voss could negotiate a favorable outcome that satisfied both parties without lowering the price. A few key action items from this chapter. Use loss aversion to frame your negotiation in terms of what the other party stands to lose. Set an initial anchor to shape the other party's perception of value and create room for negotiation. Focus on uncovering the emotional drivers behind the other party's position to tailor your approach effectively. Chapter 7. Create the illusion of control. In this chapter, Voss explains how to give the other party the illusion of control by asking calibrated questions that make them feel like they are driving the conversation. The beauty of this technique is that while the other party feels empowered, you are actually steering the negotiation toward your desired outcome. For example, instead of asking a question that leads to a yes or no answer, such as, "Can you agree to this price?" you might ask, "How does this price fit into your budget plan?" This forces the other party to think more deeply and share valuable information that you can use to guide the negotiation. Voss emphasizes that asking for help can be a surprisingly powerful way to create collaboration. When you ask the other party to explain something or validate your understanding, it makes them feel like a partner in the process. This reduces resistance and increases their willingness to work with you toward a solution. One of the key lessons in this chapter is that people are more likely to follow through on agreements if they feel like they have a hand in shaping the outcome. The illusion of control taps into this psychological need for autonomy, making the other party more invested in the final agreement. The essential action items from this chapter. Use calibrated questions to give the other party the illusion of control while guiding the conversation. Ask for help or clarification to create a sense of partnership and reduce resistance. Allow the other party to feel like they are shaping the outcome, even if you are steering the conversation. Chapter 8. Guarantee execution. Getting a verbal agreement is only half the battle. In Chapter 8, Voss focuses on how to guarantee execution and ensure that the other party follows through on their commitments. One of the most effective tools he introduces is the rule of 3, the practice of getting the other party to agree to the same thing 3 times in different ways. This ensures their commitment is genuine and they are mentally prepared to follow through. For example, after the other party agrees to a proposal, you might say, just to make sure we're on the same page, "Could you walk me through how you plan to implement this?" This not only secures a verbal commitment, but also encourages the other party to think through the practical steps needed to execute the agreement. Voss also offers insights into identifying when someone might lie or hedge their commitment. He advises negotiators to pay attention to language, tone, and body language inconsistencies. If someone is over-explaining or offering too many details, it may be a sign that they are trying to deceive you. The chapter concludes with strategies for dealing with deal killers, stakeholders who aren't directly involved in the negotiation, but can block the agreement if they aren't on board. Voss explains that it's crucial to identify these individuals early on and involve them in the conversation whenever possible. Here are a few key action items for you. Use the rule of 3 to ensure that the other party is fully committed by getting them to agree 3 times in different ways. Pay attention to verbal and nonverbal cues that may indicate dishonesty or a lack of commitment. Identify and address deal killers early to prevent them from derailing the negotiation. Chapter 9. Bargain hard. When it comes time to negotiate the final terms, Voss recommends using the Ackerman model, a step-by-step approach to effective bargaining. The Ackerman model involves making an extreme initial offer, followed by a series of calculated, incremental concessions that signal flexibility without giving up too much. The process works like this. You start by setting an extreme anchor influencing the other party's expectations. Then you make small concessions, first offering 85% of your target price, then 90%, and finally 95%. The goal is to give the other party the feeling that they are winning by getting you to move closer to their position while still maintaining control over the final outcome. Voss also emphasizes the importance of understanding the other party's negotiation style. He classifies negotiators into 3 types: accommodators who prioritize relationship building, analysts who focus on data and logic, and assertive who are driven by winning and control. By tailoring your approach to the other party's style, you can increase the likelihood of a successful outcome. An example Voss shares involves a business negotiation where he used the Ackerman model to secure a favorable deal while making the other party feel like they had achieved a victory. By setting an extreme anchor and using calibrated questions to guide the conversation, Voss was able to reach an agreement that satisfied both sides without compromising his goals. Here are a few actionable items. Use the Ackerman model to calculate incremental concessions and control the bargaining process. Set an extreme anchor to influence the other party's perception of value. Identify the other party's negotiation style and tailor your approach accordingly. Chapter 10. Find the Black Swan. The final chapter introduces the concept of black swans, a term borrowed from Nassim Nicholas Taleb. Black swans refer to unexpected events or pieces of information that can dramatically alter the course of a negotiation. Voss explains that every negotiation has its own black swans, critical pieces of hidden information that, if uncovered, can shift the power dynamics in your favor. Finding these black swans requires patience, curiosity, and active listening. Voss advises negotiators to pay close attention to the other party's body language, tone of voice, and offhand comments. These subtle clues can often point to underlying fears, motivations, or constraints that the other party has not explicitly stated. Voss recounts a story where he was negotiating a business deal. Through careful observation, he discovered that the other party had a personal stake in the outcome that they hadn't revealed. By using calibrated questions and active listening, Voss uncovered this black swan, which ultimately led to a breakthrough in the negotiation. The key takeaway from this chapter is that black swans are always present in negotiations. You just need to know how to look for them. By staying open and curious and asking the right questions, you can uncover the hidden factors leading to extraordinary outcomes. Here are a few essential action items. Always be on the lookout for black swans, hidden pieces of information that can shift the power dynamics in your favor. Use calibrated questions and active listening to uncover the other party's hidden fears, motivations, or constraints. Recognize that black swans often hold the key to achieving breakthroughs in difficult and complex negotiations. And that's a wrap on today's deep dive into Never Split the Difference by Chris Voss. We hope this episode has sparked some new ideas about how you can approach negotiation, whether in your career, personal life, or even the smallest day-to-day interactions. But here's the real question. How could your life change if you mastered the art of negotiation? What opportunities might you unlock if you could influence any conversation, turn a no into a strategic advantage, and discover hidden insights in every interaction? If today's discussion left you curious, then we encourage you to go even deeper by reading or listening to the full copy of the book. You can find links to both the book and audiobook in the episode description below. There's so much more to discover, and Voss's techniques could truly transform the way you approach challenges, big and small. Before we go, we'd love it if you could take a moment to subscribe, and share this episode with others who could benefit from learning these powerful negotiation strategies. Is there someone in your life who could use a little help with negotiation? Send this their way. And one final thought. As you go about your day, ask yourself, how many times are you negotiating without even realizing it? Are you getting the results you want? Or is there room to improve? Let's keep the conversation going, and we look forward to having you back for the next episode. Thanks for listening.